个好人是什么感受？便是觉着这世间无一不好，无一不善，内心坦坦荡荡，无所愧疚，生来欢喜，死亦无愧。
Now, this is how the PAP manipulates your mind. For those of you who are younger, you may not know that Singapore had a very strong opposition in parliament in the form of Barisan Socialists, now defunct, of course. Now, Barisan Socialists was, by many accounts, more popular than the PAP and was led by a very capable and charismatic leader, the late Lim Chin Siong. But in February 1963, more than 100 people, many of whom were Barisan's leaders, were rounded up and detained. The arrests continued, and in 1966, another of Barisan's leader, Mr. Chia Tai-po, was arrested and imprisoned for 23 years without ever being charged of a crime. He was put under house arrest in Sentosa for another 9 years. All in, he was imprisoned for 32 years, a period longer than Nelson Mandela's. Now, deprived of its leadership, Barisan never recovered and eventually disappeared from the political landscape. Student activists and trade union leaders were likewise arrested and imprisoned. Now, you can well imagine that Singaporeans since then have developed a fear of voting for the opposition, much less join an opposition party. Then in 1987, there was another round of mass arrests. This time, a group of social activists were fancifully accused of being Marxists, conspiring to violently overthrow the government. They were, like the Barisan folks, detained without trial in an exercise called Operation Spectrum. Vincent Cheng, a Catholic social worker, had labored tirelessly to speak up for the working poor in Singapore. He was fingered as the ringleader of the group, arrested and tortured by the ISD, and eventually forced to confess to his crime. Now, along with the mass detentions, PAP ministers used defamation suits to take oppositionists and its critics to court, a practice carried out till today. Along the way, newspapers independent from government control were shut down. In 1974, the Newspaper and Printing Presses Act was introduced that effectively gave the PAP the power to grant and deny permits to publish newspapers. Now, this resulted in the ridiculous situation where every newspaper, every TV station, and every radio station on this island is in the hands of the PAP government. The only other countries that I can think of whose mass media are so utterly controlled are the communist ones. And not only did the PAP destroy the opposition, civil society, and the media, it turned to intimidating voters. In the 1997 GE, then Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong threatened the electorate that if voters elected opposition MPs, your estate, through your own choice, will be left behind. They will become slums. Their estates, the PAP warned, would not be given priority in the HDB upgrading program. Today, the PAP wields almost complete control over the entire political process. From what we read to what we say, the party has been unrelenting in policing our thoughts and words, putting in more and more controls to shore up control of our minds. Hoffman is but the latest example. When you keep ramming these thoughts and practices into the heads of Singaporeans, PAP good, opposition bad, political freedom will ruin Singapore, the media must be controlled for nation building, and so on, you instill in the people the kind of fear that will keep the PAP in power, but also the kind of fear that prevents Singapore from developing into a truly mature, intelligent, and open first world nation. In fact, given the extent of control that the PAP has exerted over the past 6 decades, I am surprised that it has not been able to garner more than 60% of vote. Well, this is because more and more Singaporeans are beginning to see through the ways of the party, and they are becoming more and more resentful. How did this come about? Social media. Videos like what you are watching right now has made a difference. I've met so many of you who have told me that it's because of watching videos like this that have opened your minds and made you realize that you have been misled by the PAP all this time. This is the reason I keep asking you to share my videos as widely as you can. We cannot allow the PAP to continue to control the narrative in Singapore. After all that the PAP has done to the opposition and the electorate, PM Wong now has the gall to tell you that the opposition doesn't dare to say that we are capable of governing Singapore.
They say that partly because they know that Singaporeans will not support them if they openly declare their intention to govern.
First, you break your opposition's legs. Then you tilt the field against the opposing team, and then you keep shifting the goalposts. After you do all this, you tell everyone that your opponents are incapable of winning the match. Tell me, does this not insult your intelligence? I'm trying to make sense to you, to appeal to your intelligence, my fellow Singaporeans. Don't let the PAP fool you any longer. Mr. Wong also doesn't tell you that while he and his ministers pay themselves astronomical salaries, they are far from the competent and exceptional leaders that they've painted themselves to be. I've enumerated a long list of scandals and screw-ups committed by the present PAP leaders in another video. The latest apology by Ministers Josephine Teo and Indrani Raja over the Accra lapse involving the government's decision not to use masked NRC numbers is just the latest incident. On the other hand, it is clear that the PAP has followed the opposition's lead when it comes to policy ideas. Ideas like what SDP had advocated: abolishing streaming, introducing universal healthcare, enacting unemployment insurance, raising income tax for top earners to help the poor, and so on, all without acknowledging our contribution. But here's the real issue. Ignore Mr. Wong's taunt about the opposition. He's just being silly. What Singaporeans must focus on in this coming GE is this: the cost of living and your quality of life. Ask the really important questions like, why is life so tough and stressful for ordinary citizens? Why did the government increase the GST when inflation is already so high? Why is there a need for Singapore to bring in more and more foreigners when this island is already so crowded? Why has public housing become so expensive? Why are PAP ministers multi-millionaires while half of our population feel that they cannot achieve financial freedom? These are the real issues that are most important in this coming GE. Now think about what I've said, my fellow Singaporeans. This country's future, your children's future rests in how intelligently you think about the issues and how you vote in the next GE. Again, I beseech you, help me spread the word by sharing this video and hitting the follow button. I cannot emphasize enough how important this is.